Sven-Göran Eriksson. The name alone transports you to an era of wags, fake sheikhs, and a national fixation with Wayne Rooney's metatarsal. And today we are celebrating the man himself. From affairs with Ulrika to being held at gunpoint in North Korea, this is the story of England's unlikely national treasure.
Oh, this is getting better and better and better. Listen to this. Germany 1, England 5.
Welcome back to The Upshot. I'm Jack. Zach is here as always.
Hello, Jack.
And we've got Mickey on board.
Hello, guys.
Hello, returning. It's been a while. Feels
It's good
fitting
to be
to have
back.
you.
Every time I come back here, it just feels a lot more professional.
What, our general
Not you
demeanour
guys,
or
no.
just
I mean,
the tea
Yeah, exactly. I was given a glass of warm water.
and a phone charger.
Yeah, the phone charger.
We felt you were a fitting guest for this one because
Why?
it's a noughties nostalgia one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sven. I mean, obviously he died very recently, so we were slightly in two minds about whether it felt appropriate. But you know, this is a tribute, really.
Yeah, exactly. As long as this is a tribute,
Yeah,
I'm
let's-
very
let's
happy to be involved. Let's make
little
that
one.
clear that this is a tribute.
a little bit looking a little bit unsure.
No, I think
Palestinian.
it's definitely a tribute. Like, he's a character that we feel very fondly about, and yeah, like you said, it brings back a lot of nostalgia for that era.
It's weird because he wasn't that good an England manager in terms of results.
Oh, God.
Here we go. The knives are out. No, but he wasn't that successful for England, but he just has this like charm and joie de vivre that kind of transcends it all. That means that he's actually, I think national treasure is quite appropriate.
He had this sort of wry thing happening, which is like he never sort of raised his voice and never really changed his like level of emotion, but somehow he was like the most like sexually active man in the country for about 3 years.
It is very impressive when you look at him. He's not exactly your
I think he's just dazzlingly handsome.
archetype of like Lothario.
Yeah.
But
Well, when he rocks up in England, they were like, he looks like a librarian. And he speaks like one.
yeah.
But I don't know, something about
Something
the man.
about him.
Yeah, we are obviously going to discuss some of the more scandalous moments, as he also did in his recent doc, which if you haven't seen, it's decent. Slightly strange mix of like very touching farewell and then like very salacious run through his scandals.
He's proud of his achievements.
Yeah, I
All
just
of
think
them.
he doesn't mind.
Yeah,
And-
he seems to. He's always been relatively open about talking about them. I think, right? At least in like later years.
And look, this is going to be quite nostalgic. You know, really, a lot of the story takes place in the early noughties. All right, Zach, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Let's go back. So Sven-Göran Eriksson was born in a small town called Suna in central Sweden. He had a pretty undistinguished career as a defender in the Swedish lower leagues, and then after that worked part-time as a PE teacher whilst doing his coaching badges, working as assistant coach at a third-tier team. He wrote his coaching thesis on 4-4-2, which England fans will not be surprised to hear. There was a line in it that said, "Under no circumstances would the formation be changed."
Right, so he's died hard.
Yeah. He moved his wedding day because it fell on the final day of his coaching course.
Right. I mean, you want the badges.
Yeah. It was worth it. Yeah, he then moved on to Göteborg, who are one of the big teams in Sweden. It was a bit of a surprise appointment. Mickey's stroking his nothing. Göteborg.
What's the only one I've heard of, actually. So actually,
You'll be familiar with their great 78-79 season. Pioneering the Trikarkista.
Yeah, I mean they are one of the giants of Scandinavian football. It was a big surprise when Sven was appointed manager there. A lot of the players had never heard of him, but he does incredibly well. He guides them to the 1982 UEFA Cup. It's the first time that a team from Scandinavia has ever won a European competition, and that kind of spells the start of Sven's career at top European clubs. So Benfica snap him up that summer and he wins 2 consecutive titles with them. So he's like a bona fide top manager by this point, and he then moves on to Italy where he manages Roma, Fiorentina and Sampdoria, and he's successful with all of them. He wins the Coppa Italia a few times. Actually, interesting fact, up until 1985 foreign managers weren't allowed to sit on the bench in Italy. So when Sven first moved there, he was only allowed to talk to his team at half time.
Yeah.
There was actually told one story about like going down there. He's like, the team was playing really badly and he wanted to go into the dressing room at half time. And as he was going down the steps, someone just stepped in front of him and pulled back their blazer, and there was just a gun in the holster.
Foreign managers as in like club managers that were from other countries?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know, it just seems quite bizarre. If you're going to let teams... Like, what's the point in hiring a coach if they're not allowed to actually
Maybe they
coach?
have
Couldn't you
that
just have like a head
influential.
coach or whatever that they can sit on your behalf? Like, basically, he's the general manager.
Walkie-talkie.
Yeah, that's
right?
what we say. He was in the stands with the walkie-talkie.
really?
Oh, God.
Yeah. So he ends up at Sampdoria, and it's there in 1992 that Sven has his first affair. I should stress he had an extremely successful club career in Italy. He actually wins 18 trophies in his club career
amazing.
before going to
Pioneer.
England. Yeah, it's not the only thing he's a pioneer in. So he's at Sampdoria, it's 1992, and meets this lovely lady called Grazia Manicelli, who's the mother at his kid's school, like a mother of one of the other kids.
Was he's meeting her at like pick up and drop off?
Yeah, he says that they'd sort of met eyes at school and there was a sort of like flirty relationship. He describes it quite nicely in his book. He says, I had discovered that there were other women in this world, and some of them were even interested in Mr. Eriksson. One of them was Grazia Manicelli, a dark, curvy Italian beauty.
She does sound fit.
Yeah.
Even her name.
Is this is the woman at the school gates?
Yeah, I have to say that's
not somewhere that I get
what's
the horn on.
Yeah, what school? Yeah. Is it the sort of place you encounter these like...
It's different in Italy. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly. It really is, yeah.
So yeah, they meet at school, and eventually
The kids are like,
Parents'
wait,
evening.
Dad, can we go? And he's like, one second. Graziana, you were saying.
Yeah. So eventually he asks her out for dinner, and this leads to that, and they end up meeting each other weekly. He'd go over to her house. I think she's divorced.
Detour
Fair
after
game, it is.
school pickup. It's like, where are they?
Yeah, kids, you might just play downstairs. He's married though, right?
He's married.
Yeah, do you want to do another play there, Enzo's?
Again?
We actually don't like each other.
yeah, shut up. Get in the car.
Yeah, sadly, his wife does find out about it. Well, it's not sad that she finds out. His wife finds out about it.
He would have got away with it from his fucking wife.
We're really pro Sven on this.
You've overcorrected there.
His wife finds out about it, and she is sad. Clearly, obviously, as she might be.
As is her wont.
Yeah. But she does forgive him. They stay together for a while until she discovers that he's carried on seeing Graziella behind her back, and then at that point she's like, "That's it." They get divorced.
Early signs of someone who's quite brazen. It is Italy.
Yeah,
That is kind of the vibe.
yeah. I
of
mean,
the
it was
rules.
only when he moved to Italy that he got into that
right.
sort of scene.
Is he allowed to sit in the dugout of his divorce? That's probably the rules as well, isn't it?
I think it's encouraged from him.
Yeah.
So in 1997 he moves on to Lazio, which is maybe his most successful era. So he, in 3 years, wins Serie A, the Coppa Italia, and the European Cup Winners' Cup. So for Lazio, I think it was only their second ever Serie A title. So this is like their absolute golden era.
It's like winning the league with Spurs, right?
Yeah.
They're like they're a
I
big
guess
club,
that's
but you
good-
don't
good
expect them to
equivalent.
win it.
Yeah. So it's sort of that spell that earns him a call from the FA in 2001.
Yeah.
Who was the manager before him?
Kevin Keegan.
Okay,
So
yeah.
England had been on this like really rocky run of managers. Terry Venables had to go because he had some dodgy business dealings.
Yeah, Glenn Hoddle believed that disabled people they'd done something bad in a previous life.
Yeah, he thought they were evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that got him sacked. And then England had Kevin Keegan, who ended up resigning in the toilets after a match in 2000. Apparently the FA chief walked in and David Beckham was crying and was like, David, you need to talk to him. And Keegan had like locked himself in a cubicle and was like refusing to come out. So all quite dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point the FA are like, right, we've tried it with these English lads. They're all over the shop. Let's have a foreign manager. Let's have someone a bit more refined, cultured, who's worked in a number of football environments and, brings a more sophisticated style to the game. and they send for Sven, who, you know, his CV looks pretty amazing. He's been punching above his team's weight. The irony, of course, is that he was an absolute 4-4-2 merchant, so he played like the most agricultural English football of all the manager options, which somehow didn't get picked up in the screening.
There was a story even from his time back in Sweden where the attendance of his team dropped by like 30% because the football was so shit. The fans just rebelled.
The fans? I thought you meant the players. It's not turning up.
It's that bad.
Maybe that too.
Yeah, so it is odd. It was a weird aspect of it. Like they were saying,
Just looking at him, I mean, like you wouldn't think he was that dynamic.
Well, this is the perception of the press. They're quite hostile. So first of all, they're furious about...
They're xenophobic.
Yeah. So I'll read you a quote from the Daily Mail. They said, England fans wanted Terry Venables, and rather than Gianni Foreigner, I believe they would have settled for Billy Anybody. And then it goes on. Yet we sell our birthright down the fjord to a nation of 7 million skiers and hammer throwers who spend half their year living in total darkness. I should actually say this episode contains some seriously unhinged moments from the British press.
God.
The thing is, you'd like to say that is... it's very, very naughty, that kind of thing, but I would not be surprised if the Daily Mail published that tomorrow.
Anyway, Sven's quite baffled by this hostility because, like, you certainly don't get that in Scandinavia, but even in Italy, it's a bit like football and, like, having a go at the person. They're quite church and state. Like, they'd be critical of his tactics, but they wouldn't, like, go after his character or nationality. Although they did ban him from the dugout.
Gianni Foreigner as well.
Gianni Foreigner.
Do they know where I'm from?
Well, he played in Italy. It's kind of a good gag if you are filled up with xenophobic hatred. But the press also, they don't really understand him because, you know, when they heard we're getting a foreign manager, I think they're thinking a slick Italian, you know, who's sort of like lights up matches, but is also like plays a...
They got someone from PwC.
Yeah, exactly. So they describe him as looking like a librarian. They all mention that he's listed Tibetan poetry as his hobby, which I'm pretty sure is just a line to get someone into bed anyway. Go on, recite some. Whispering it into Graziano Manicendi's ears. But they're also kind of quite fascinated with him. It sounds odd now, but it was a massive deal to have a foreign manager. And no less than Tony Blair is intrigued and invites Sven to number 10 for a cup of tea. And apparently he starts pouring the tea and he turns to Sven and he goes, shall we have a bet? Who's going to keep their job longer, me or you? And
What year was this?
2001.
Okay.
So Blair's into his second term.
Yes.
Just started. He hasn't yet invaded Afghanistan.
He was sort of riding high, wasn't he? Was Sven pre or post 9/11?
Pre-appointment. Sorry, no, this is January 2001. Yeah, so pre 9/11.
Okay.
Before the towers.
He's got pre 9/11 energy, hasn't he?
Yeah, it was all different before the towers, wasn't it?
Were the Twin Towers collapsing?
Well, Wembley.
Yeah.
You know, it was really similar time. The last game of the old Wembley was October 2001.
God.
Anyway, the other thing that really intrigues the press about Sven is, of course, his girlfriend, the lovely Nancy Dell'Olio, who is an Italian-American lawyer and socialite. And so they met in 1998 when Sven's at Lazio. So apparently they met on this night. Sven was with this group of old friends, and among the old friends was his ex-wife, who was, I guess he's on good enough terms with. And apparently at the end of the night they're all talking, and the ex-wife says, I bet Nancy Dell'Olio will soon end up in Mr. Eriksson's bed if she hasn't already.
Do they all refer to him as Mr. Eriksson? Including himself?
Yeah. And his wife.
His wife? Isn't she Mrs. Eriksson?
No, she's ex-wife.
Okay, yes. Yeah.
I just love that his wife is so used to his philandering that she's making predictions.
Yeah, no, she's setting him up with people.
Yeah, and she's kind of loving it, I think. Anyway, they do begin a very fiery relationship. Apparently they have these quite one-way rows where Nancy's just bollocking him.
And he's like, okay.
Yeah, which again, it's like, it's an odd mix of kind of, you know, he's not a doormat, but he's kind of like, I guess, just...
You can't really imagine him. Yeah, you can't really imagine him bollocking players either, can you?
Don't think he really did. Yeah, it's the impression.
Probably the issue.
Yeah,
with that team.
Yeah, that and the 4-4-2. Anyway, on the pitch, he's got a big job on his hands because England are second bottom of their qualifying group when he takes over. It's all looking a bit shaky about whether they'll make the World Cup, but Sven steers them to 5 straight victories, including the famous 5-1 win over Germany. Michael Owen hat-trick. It's a bit of English football folklore. I think possibly Germans don't really give a shit about it.
No,
obviously
it's a
random qualifier.
Yeah, exactly.
I just don't think your famous matches can be outside of tournaments.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I remember that was the time when there was a lot of guys in the a lot of fans in the stadium with like World War II hats on.
Yeah, still are, I think. Yeah. What, singing 10 German bombers,
exactly.
Spitfire pilot goggles.
My favourite one was at the Qatar World Cup, them all turning up dressed as medieval crusaders. It's like the medieval crusaders who drove Muslims out of the Middle East, turning up in this devoutly Islamic kingdom.
The worst day south.
You get a few of those in the sort of Tommy Robinson marches as well. Yeah,
Well, the Crusaders.
Yeah, like guys in like full chainmail.
Yeah, I guess
I got embroiled in that march the other day. Well, I was with my kids, and I was doing a sort of my parents, and I was doing a search for the Cheshire Cat. Like you go like around London with clues, and the first clue was like, go to this pub and order a drink, and they will give you a clue. And I went in, it was just like 300 guys in St George's flags, shaved heads, all fucked on coke,
off to burn down
I was
Holiday Inn.
I think I'm going to leave.
You're like, has anyone seen the Cheshire Cat?
Has whoever's put together that Cheshire Cat tour, do they know what they were doing? Is this some like notorious far right
It was
stronghold?
actually signed T. Robinson.
Clue 2, like the Molotov cocktail. Anyway, everyone's riding high after that 5-1 win, that famous win that we all remember, until England's final game against Greece, where they need a draw to qualify. And of course, we all remember it. It's when Beckham scores that injury time free kick. I think we talked about it on the Beckham episode.
We did.
Yeah. I was watching it with my dad.
Yeah.
As Beckham was running in, he goes, he's going to score this. And as he said that, I sat on the remote and it changed channel. And he goes, you fuckhead! You fucking fuckhead! And then we turned it back on and Beckham was just celebrating. He's looking at me, just seething. Yeah, quite out of character. He's not normally like that. Anyway, obviously that takes England to the World Cup and kicks off Sven Mania, which I don't remember at the time, but apparently it was a massive thing. People were getting haircuts. I've got a picture here.
Yeah.
A little boy who got the Sven haircut. I'll link to it in the show notes. It's
that is so bizarre. He's just shaved the top of his head.
I'm going to link to that. That is one of the great haircuts for your heroes.
The wide
It's
parting.
basically it's sort of the anti-Ronaldo haircut.
It's the inverse. Isn't it? It's kind of monk-like, I guess.
Yeah.
It's sort of medieval.
Yeah, but they put glasses on him as well just to make him more Sven.
And a little England shirt.
Oh yeah, little England polo. And of course, it spawns one of the great England songs. Well,
I think this is actually up there with the what's it called, Lightning Seeds.
Sven-Göran Eriksson. He's got Jimmy Savile's haircut, so where'd he get a lovely girlfriend? He tried so many players for the Holland game. Yeah, how do you forget Collymore? The say is insane. Sven-Göran Eriksson. He's a lovely geezer, but don't forget that he's from Sweden.
What are they called again?
Bell and Sperling. There's a really good bit in the Sven documentary where they play him the video of the song, and he says he's never heard it before.
What?
And then
That is bad. I don't know how
to
he
them, I've never seen this. Are they a famous band? And the producers are like, yeah,
you know the Beatles are slightly smaller than
yeah,
that.
they're really famous. Yeah.
How did you never hear it?
Huh?
No one like whistled it to him or like sung. But they probably just sung it to him. They probably thought this is just like a fan.
He strikes me as a
chant.
man who's quite oblivious to like pop culture.
Yeah, he's too busy getting his end away.
Yeah, honestly, I think he's just like not operating in that world. I bet he's never reading the papers.
Really? He feels like he
I
reads
don't know,
the
but
papers.
he's hanging out with Ulrika Johnson.
Yes, he is. Yeah. Sven is really starting to enjoy the perks of Sven Mania, but the real treasure is an invite to none other than Richard Desmond's birthday party. So Richard Desmond is the quite seedy owner of the Daily Express, the Star. He's quite a lot of porn mags, I think, in the stable as well. But
why is he seedy? Is he seedy himself, or does he just preside over a seedy
presides over
empire?
a seedy empire.
Yeah.
I'm not calling him seedy. There's
Okay,
no
yeah.
suggestion Mr. Desmond is seedy himself. Anyway, this is the noughties, so despite him being a sort of porn baron, Richard Desmond...
That's definitely libelous.
Richard Desmond has the great and the good at his party. So Sven's there, Alistair Campbell's there, Tony Blair's there, and Alistair Campbell, who at this point is quite matey with Sven, decides to introduce him to Ulrika Johnson, who's his fellow Swede. It's sort of like, you guys are both Swedish, why don't you guys have a talk? And apparently it's flirty from the beginning, so Ulrika asks Sven for his autograph, which I guess back then was the normal way of sort of recording your meeting with a famous person.
Yeah, it would be a selfie now.
Yeah, it'd be a selfie now, but you would get... it's not that weird that she got an autograph, but I think it is quite
What did she
flirty.
do with that?
Well, yeah, I always wonder that with autographs. You just keep them at home.
Forwarded a check.
Yeah, well, come on to that. But they really hit it off, and they're flirting in Swedish. Apparently Nancy is there just stone-faced, because although they're talking in Swedish, and Swedish can sound quite sort of sing-song anyway, but it's clear that there's a vibe between Sven and...
Him and Nancy aren't married.
They're not married, but they live together.
Are they open in that sort of Italian way?
I mean, yeah. I
Not
guess.
to generalise.
Depends who you ask.
Yeah, looking back, it looks like they were. I don't know if Nancy's aware. Anyway, Sven and Ulrika do begin this short affair. Apparently, he woos her by always bringing Veuve Clicquot champagne and treating her to trips in his Portuguese love nest. So I think he's got a place in the Algarve. Anyway, apparently Sven's like really trying to... Part of his sort of gentlemanly vibe is that he wants to pay for everything. He's like, I'll send you a jet. And Ulrika's like, look, I make my own money. I don't want to be like paid. Or
How much money is Sven getting?
he's on like a few million quid a year contract, so good money. But anyway, Sven keeps insisting. He just feels bad that she's spending all this money to come and see him. And after one dirty weekend in Portugal, he slips a blank check into her pocket when she's not looking. She gets home, puts her hand in her jacket, and there is a check. I've got a photo of it here because Ulrika kept it, from Coots Bank. Pay Ulrika Johnson, signed by Mr. Sven-Göran Eriksson. No amount specified. It's a bit of a weird move.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sort of sex worker.
Yeah. It's like, name your price.
Yeah.
Could she have just stuck $1 million
She
quid
could
in
have
there?
done it. She could have done anything. She was quite... So she's still got this if she's...
Yeah, no, so she said
friendly,
she only recently published this photo of it, but she said, like, I've kept it as a funny souvenir.
Or was she like, that's hilarious? Or was she like, I'm not a prostitute?
Yeah, I think a bit more of the latter. I don't know how late in their affair this was, but it all comes out in the press.
But he wasn't suggesting that he was paying her for anything, right?
No,
he was doing it as just like a gentlemanly gesture.
Anyway, so their relationship kind of peters out, and then word reaches the press in 2002 that the pair of them have been having an affair, and Ulrika ends up giving some quite colourful quotes. She says to the press, "Sex with Sven was as ordered and functional as an IKEA instruction manual. He is devoid of passion." Which, harsh, I think. And then she says, "He would always talk dirty in this sing-songy broken English. I had to try to ignore it."
She's really playing up to the Swedish stereotypes as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. She's Swedish.
Yeah.
What's she doing?
Well, also, I think
Hanging her fellow countrymen out to dry.
she always makes out like she didn't want the story to be in the press, but she gives these quotes that are definitely like, you've complied with the journalist.
Yeah,
there to
that's
get...
like, also, she's revised that quote.
Well, she's just
like,
said to the journalist, make something
like,
funny up.
Yeah, exactly. And the journalist has made it up.
And actually, the News of the World give her a column after this.
Oh, really? What was she up to at this point?
Post-Gladiators, right?
Oh, is that where she came from?
She was a weather presenter to start with.
I think she'd actually just had a really hard breakup with the father of her kids, and she was looking for something sort of like fun. Yeah, anyway, so I can't work out if Ulrika stitches him up or not, but she ends up giving quite a lot to the tabloids. The FA obviously livid. They're like, this is not what we want to be reading about our manager. Apparently the FA chairman, every time this happens, it's always in the Sunday papers, it's always the News of the World, and he keeps calling Sven, and he's just like, "Sven, I just want to sleep on Sundays. I don't want to have to deal with this shit." So they're really annoyed. But Sven's a bit like, what's the problem? He says to David Davis, the head of the FA, "I'm a single man. Why can I not see other women? What's the issue?"
Nancy's like, what?
Yeah, the issue, mate, is that you live with your girlfriend, Nancy, and you're not single.
I'm a single man.
It's quite an insight into his, like, it's like he thinks he's in an open relationship. Maybe they were. Although Nancy seems to see it quite differently, because when the story breaks, she punches him in the face.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I think we can all see what the issue is. But actually, Nancy's profile really grows out of it, and she sort of loves it. So she says later that actually the only reason she stayed with him there is she thought there's something in this for me in terms of my career, which very honest.
So she ditched the law.
Yeah, I think the law's long gone.
She was a big fixture, wasn't she?
She
was
did a
in the press
lot
all the
of
time.
reality TV, like
Yeah.
Celeb Big Brother. There's quite a good Paxman interview with her where she's talking for ages, and then Paxman just goes, "I'm sorry, I haven't the faintest idea what you're talking about."
So she's just kind of allowing him to do this and then feeding off the image of her being...
Well, it makes her
Like
really
a
famous
vixen.
because I guess it just shines a light on
Yeah.
his family life. But yeah, I think I'm going to put this one down to like European standards on fidelity that us
Generalisation.
pathetic Brits don't understand when we're shagging with the lights off and socks on.
Anyway,
Back to football.
Back to football from that. So it's 2002. England fly off to Japan and Korea for the World Cup, and the hopes are pretty high. They've had this good end to their qualifying campaign, famous win over Germany. The World Cup, though, is a bit disappointing. They're pretty unspectacular in the group stages. Reach the quarterfinals against Brazil, but then get knocked out by that free kick by Ronaldinho for Brazil.
I think he's nodding.
No, I remember it really well.
probably do remember that.
Watched it in the back of a car.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wasn't it morning? Yeah, we watched it
Yeah,
at
I
school.
watched it. I was on a sponsored walk. My dad was like driving alongside in the car, and then everyone just jumped in. And it was like it was when it was like one of the first times when you can have there were TVs in the back of seats.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Nice car.
What was the final score?
2-1.
2-1.
We
Oh,
Michael Owen scored.
Michael Owen scored. We were
yeah.
1-0 up at half time, and actually Gareth Southgate gave an interview afterwards. He gave a pretty scathing review of Sven's halftime team talk. So he said, "We were expecting Winston Churchill, and instead we got Ian Duncan Smith."
He looked a bit like Ian Duncan Smith.
The quiet man is turning up the volume. Also, whoever is expecting Winston Churchill out of Sven?
Also, it's a little bit rich coming from Gareth Southgate as well.
Yeah, I don't think he was ever doing fight them on the beaches.
Yeah. So Sven actually revealed years later that earlier in 2002, before the World Cup, he'd actually signed a deal to replace Alex Ferguson as manager of Man United, because Fergie had come out that year and had said that he was going to retire at the end of the season, then reversed that decision.
God, that is sliding doors.
Yeah.
Fergie did another 12 years after that or something.
Yeah.
Would Sven have been a good Man United manager?
It would have also been a very quick turnaround for Sven to just, because he joined in 2001 and then he'd signed to take over at Man United in 2002.
I mean, that would be massively controversial.
Yeah, it would have been. I mean, he sort of said, like, you have to, when a club like Man United comes, you have to take this opportunity. Like, mate, you're manager of England.
It also shows how high his stock still was. That Basically, because he beat Germany 5-1 and drew with Greece. Then pumped Albania in Tirana. Suddenly, like, Man United are trying to poach him.
Chelsea tried the same thing, actually. So the following year, 48 hours after Roman Abramovich buys Chelsea, Sven-Göran Eriksson is photographed visiting his house in London.
So subtle. Yeah. I think I'll just pop in through the front door.
Yeah.
It does capture the naivety of Sven that's really endearing. I think a lot of the reason people like him is, like, with these scandals and stuff, he just kind of doesn't see the big deal.
And yeah, so like all water of a duck's back.
But the FA, I think, are just like, please, can you just, like, stop?
They're not in the middle of the World Cup at this point.
No, but
Flying home.
this was like mid qualifying campaign for the Euro, for Euro 2004. So they're probably just thinking, like, can you stop talking to fucking Roman Abramovich and go and scout out Bolton against Middlesbrough, or like watch some videos of the under 21s. And in a way, he was studying the Premier League, just not quite how the FA had in mind. So David Davis, who's the former FA chief, said that Sven pulled him aside one time at the FA headquarters and was like, "David, I like Carlo Cudicini, the goalkeeper, Chelsea." And David Davis is like, "Yeah, he's Italian." And then Sven's like, "Also, can you find out about Steedmar Bronk, Edu, and Louis Saha?"
French, Brazilian French.
Yeah.
Does he realise what job he's got?
Yeah. He's like, I'm Man United manager, aren't I? And can you find out about Ulrika Johnson? I want to play her.
I think
are they eligible, though, some of those players?
His thinking was that they've lived in England for long enough to be eligible for a passport.
I remember the Cudicini rumours got quite advanced.
Yeah,
why would they want to do that?
Because they're not going to play for Italy. Or
Saha?
Yeah,
Saha.
fringes of the French team.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they said no.
Yeah, I mean, they said no.
He's still French, though.
I think David Davis was also just like, Sven, I think this is not going to go that well. It doesn't happen, though, so Sven has to stick with his squad of boring old England players. And they head off to the Euros. It's Wayne Rooney's first tournament, and he's unplayable in those first few games, but then breaks his foot in the quarterfinal against Portugal, and England lose on penalties.
That's the one they should have won.
That in 2006 as well. Really.
The tournament they should have won.
Yeah,
they should have won the last two.
But Greece won. Yeah, I mean, in that era. Greece won that
2004,
Euros.
yeah.
And England were so good.
Where was that again?
Injured. Portugal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big disappointment on the pitch. But back home, another scandal is brewing. So in 2004, Sven begins an affair with the FA secretary, Faria Alam. So They met at the FA offices. She'd by this point already had an affair with Mark Palios, who was the CEO, I think, of the FA.
Did he call him and be like, I would like to make a signing, your secretary? Edu and one more person, Faria Alam.
Yeah. So anyway, they get to know each other at the office, and eventually Sven asks her out for dinner. He is still
How
with
much time
Nancy
is he
at this
spending in
point.
the office?
Too
You're a
much.
football manager.
Why are you in the office? Sven, you're coming in every day, early.
Yeah, he asks her out for lunch at some point, and he said that even before this first lunch date, he'd already booked a hotel room for afterwards. So I think he knew where that was going.
Wow.
Wow.
At lunch as well.
That's a certain type of man. You know?
And what time was lunch? Because the check-ins are usually about 3.
He's efficient.
He's got an efficient, organised
yeah.
machine around doing it.
It's quite a 4-4-2 approach to dating.
Route 1.
He says that by the time the Euros came around, they were speaking on the phone every day during the tournament.
Oh, so
despite the fact that Nancy was in Portugal, staying with all the players' families.
right. So he's speaking to her on the phone every day, which to me indicates a level of emotional connection.
Yeah.
It's not just a sex thing.
No, I think he says later that he did really fall in love with her. But the story gets out. So when he gets back from the Euros, he's greeted by a News of the World front page spread exposing the affair. Initially, the FA come out and deny it, but the News of the World go to them and show them the evidence. And they also tell the FA that they know about Faria Alam's affair with Mark Palios. And at this point, the FA is just like, shit, okay. And it's just panic stations there trying to cover up the Mark Palios affair. So they say to the News of the World, look, if you keep Mark Palios out of the story, then we'll give you all the details of the affair. We'll talk to Faria Alam. We'll give you her basically to get her story. And they strike that deal. So Sven basically says that he's been thrown to the wolves, really.
What I don't get about that is it's obviously a smaller story about Palios, so they should have done it the other way round, right?
The FA should.
Yeah, the Sven
it
thing's
does seem weird that.
I guess Mark Palios made that decision. As CEO. If you're neutral in that, you're giving them Palios to save Sven, I think.
Yeah, it's for sure. It's a big story. It's more scandalous.
Yeah, no one knows who Mark Palios is.
Yeah. It's just like an office romance, basically, an office affair. Anyway, it turns out the News of the World has also been hacking Sven's phone.
That's how they're getting these stories.
Yeah, for sure. They'd also got hold of Faria Alam's emails where she described shagging Sven to a friend of hers. So the papers go crazy about this. Obviously, it's a proper noughties tabloid feeding frenzy.
Yeah.
So the Daily Mail do an article entitled "The Rotten Heart of Football," and they describe it as grubbiness beyond measure, sleaze, greed, disloyalty, and lies. Day by day, the rottenness at the heart of our national game is laid bare, and it will take more than an inquiry or the resignation of Eriksson to clear away the stench. Against this miserable background, is it any wonder that sexually transmitted diseases are at such a frightening level? It's like, what?
The chlamydia is his fault as well.
You're now blaming Sven-Göran Eriksson for a rise in STDs.
He probably brought it with him from Italy.
Yes.
That is mental. Also, look, it's worse than just a standard affair because, like, same workplace and stuff, but, like, fucking hell, that's no reaction.
Yeah, and who's not to say he doesn't protect himself and his partner?
Oh, you're talking about the STD thing, yeah.
So it's a big leap.
I think it's unfair to pin
it's
a spike in
he doesn't wrap up
chlamydia.
as well.
They're
Worst of
just
all.
finding whatever was the sort of zeitgeisty fear of the time and just tying everything together into one like toxic hate piece.
Meanwhile, their pals at the News of the World are just hacking his phone, doing his pins.
Yeah.
How's Sven taking it?
So Sven flees back to his parents' house in Sweden, but the media follow him. So the lake near the house is filled up with boats, paparazzi with long lenses. One of them rents a crane so that they can get shots of him in the house. And at one point, Sven's dad has had enough of it, so he loads up his car, like the seat of his car, with bin bags, covers it with a blanket to make it look like there's somebody in the seat, and drives off. And all of the paparazzi follow him, thinking that it's him trying to sneak Sven out. And then he just pulls up at the dump, takes the blanket off, and just chucks all of his.
Probably looked like he had a body in that.
Which is quite nice. Back in England, though, the News of the World prove that they're not quite as trustworthy as they say, and they fuck over the FA again. they publish not only the Mark Palios story, but they also do an expose of the FA trying to cover up the Mark Palios story.
Fuck's sake. Bastards.
They're now just turning their own interactions into a story.
Everything's content.
Yeah. And obviously there's still this frenzy going on of papers trying to get Fourier's side of the story. And, you know, by this point, details have come out. Her emails that she'd sent to her friend about shagging Sven had been in the papers already. So Sven goes to Fourier and he says, look, tell your story. Go and tell them everything. Make some money. Why not?
Very enlightened.
Yeah, it is. He's really just like, you know, if this is the world that we're living in, then we may as well roll with it. And
it's funny that people care so much.
Yeah,
like so that people give that much of a shit about Sven-Göran Eriksson's sex life.
Right, that's sort of the premise of this podcast. We cannot insult our audience. Sort of make my living out of that.
Who gives a shit?
My raison d'etre.
Who gives a shit? And then just that music, upshot music starts coming in.
Anyway, Fourier does just that. She makes hundreds of thousands spilling details of their lovemaking, and she's very complimentary. So she describes Sven as a master of the art of lovemaking. She says, "It was the best sex of my life. He's amazingly physical and took control. He was very sensual, stroking my back and running his hands through my hair. He kissed my tummy and my legs, covering me from head to toe. He took his time and was concerned only about my fulfillment. He went on for ages and I was in ecstasy."
So am I.
Yeah.
Sort of Mickey's groin stirring. Halfway through that. It's quite Julie Cooper.
So who's telling the truth? Her or you, Ulrika?
Well,
yeah, this is the
possible
thing,
that he's just performed better with Fourier because there was a
there's a
genuine
real
connection.
connection there. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they were completely like besotted with each other. She says that at one point he flies her off to his love nest in Sweden and cooks her dinner, and after dinner, you know, they can't get enough of each other, but he insists on clearing the table and doing the dishes before they go up to bed.
I thought he didn't use the dishwasher though. I don't know why I'm obsessed about
the dishwasher.
Really
he loaded the dishwasher.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He loaded the dishwasher. I mean,
Why
that's
is
not that hard.
Why is that even a detail? Oh, she's saying like, what a gentleman.
Yeah,
yeah.
They were so hot for each other, but that he still took the time to load the dishwasher. I mean, it's his house.
Always load it at the time.
Exactly.
Don't leave it.
If there was shit in there, he'd probably be like, "No, I'll wait for next time."
Yeah, it's clean. Fuck it.
Yeah. So anyway,
done the dishes.
Sven, they've done. So they've loaded up the
dishwasher. Is on.
Loaded up the dishwasher.
What cycle?
Tablet.
Okay.
Wiped down the surfaces. Make sure there's no sort of food detritus in the sink. Took out the bins.
While we're here, I left the laundry.
I feel like you're trying to do everything to avoid having sex with me now.
No.
Like I need to paint the gate.
Yeah, the mixed recycling was sorted, and finally they headed upstairs, and they shag on the stairs on the way up. That's how desperate she was by that point.
It's like, come on.
Shag on the stairs on the way up.
That's his fault.
How do we know this, by the way?
If we go upstairs, we're going to pass the bathroom, and
exactly.
Tumble dryer's up there, and I happen to know the fluff thing he's taking out and changing.
So anyway, they despite that they do have a very passionate relationship, and she gives him excellent reviews, and Sven doesn't mind at all about her spilling the beans on that, which, to be fair, when you get a review like that, you wouldn't be.
Yeah.
So anyway, this story's been broken in the press, and it's a big story. And Sven says that the saddest thing for him at that point was that he knew that it was over with Fourier. He says that in his book, he says, "I think love had even blossomed, at least from my end." Which, I mean, he was still living with Nancy. So.
Yeah, and how's Nancy taking it?
Not well.
Didn't you say that he shags Fourier while on the phone to Nancy at one point?
Yeah.
Little Bluetooth headset. It's the mid-noughties.
He's arguing on the phone mid-sex. worthy of a film. Also, I don't get, why does their relationship have to end? Why can't you at that point be like, I love you, we've had some bad press, but...
That's sad.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's probably Nancy had a...
Yeah, he's in a relationship with someone else.
I think that relationship probably needs to come to an end.
They stay together for a while after this. Anyway, for her part, Faria makes a pretty good celeb career out of it. She goes on Celeb Big Brother in 2006. Second one eliminated, but still. And then she's been kind of retelling this story in years since. There's a good quote from her. She said, "The naughties were just that. They were naughty. You could do so many things. I'll be honest. I was just a beautiful girl and I attracted a lot of attention."
I like that.
Yeah.
Just honest.
She had her
Yeah,
time.
it's kind of sad because it's obviously in one sense a grubby tabloid scandal of them hacking his phone and stuff, but it's also like two people who are possibly falling for each other but were, denied that.
One of them was married.
Yeah, one of them was in a long-term relationship, which he couldn't drag himself
Is he still
from.
England manager?
No, he's still England manager at this point. This is 2004, so it's post-Euros. And then really, for him, from this point onwards, it's all about the 2006 World Cup. He knows that's going to be his last tournament. He's been there 5 years. And as that tournament approaches, he has already got his eye on the next job. So when he's invited for a meal at Dubai's Burj Al Arab by a wealthy sheikh who's interested in getting into English football, Sven is licking his lips. And he sits down with this guy. He brings his agent along as well. And, Sven sees a chance to secure his future because this sheikh sounds like he might want to buy a football club. And Sven suggests Aston Villa, who are for sale. And he starts to, brainstorm what they can do there. He says he thinks he can lure David Beckham from Real Madrid. He says Beckham isn't happy there. They even discuss his potential salary if he took the Villa job. 5 million quid a year, which is a huge deal at that point. There is, of course, only one problem. The wealthy sheikh is the fake sheikh from the News of the World, Mazhar Mahmood, who's a bit of a low life. And it's basically just entrapped Sven. I just like the fake sheikh does some stories where he outs like genuine criminals and match fixing. But this is just like a guy thinking about his next job.
Exactly, the job interview. Like, why he hasn't actually done anything wrong.
I never thought he did anything wrong.
I always thought the fake sheikh was really funny because he doesn't speak Arabic.
No. He's just English.
Yeah, I know. Someone's like,
my favourite detail about
who would fall for this?
Yeah, he's just like, hello.
Exactly.
But Sven, like many others, fall for it. The other thing about the fake sheikh Mazhar Mahmood, just to illustrate what sort of guy he is, he got his break in journalism by dobbing in his uncle for selling pirate DVDs to the local paper.
The fake sheikh did.
Yeah, I mean,
was he undercover?
Yeah, he did jail for perjury. He lied in court.
Was he undercover as he?
I don't know.
As he caught his uncle.
Told his uncle he was a sheikh. He wanted a pirate copy of.
Give me Mean Girls.
Anyway, I don't think Sven's done much wrong there, but the FA are just sick of scandal by this point. So he gets yet another bollocking, and he's told by the chief on that call, after the World Cup, we're done. That's it. So he was meant to do another 2 years, apparently, but that's it. The FA announced, this is January 2006, they say, the World Cup, that's going to be it. And actually, they announced Steve McLaren as his successor before he's done. Anyway, he goes to the World Cup, and it's his last shot. We actually talked about this quite a lot on our Baden-Baden episode. We did a whole thing, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we all know how it ends. The old foes, Portugal, once again, in the quarter-final. Wayne Rooney has that moment of madness where he steps on Ronaldo's bollocks. Ronaldo winks to the bench, and it's all over. And that's it for Sven. There's quite a touching press conference afterwards where he basically says to the press, like, don't savage Wayne Rooney like you did to David Beckham. Like, please, you need him. It's quite nice. It shows...
That's very nice.
Shows, the quality of the man that he's thinking about that at the time. But, a lot of people question his tactics and selection in that tournament, and it was the one where he brought Theo Walcott, which everyone was a bit confused by. I don't think he did that much wrong on the pitch, but it did turn out later that he'd been using a white witch to advise him. A little bit, it's just odd. So this Italian mystic called Maga Clara, Mystic Mag.
It sounds like there's going to be a sex angle.
Well, depends how you read it, because basically she's well known in Italian football circles. She'd been super involved with a lot of managers, and then eventually she gets accused of fraud, and police raid her.
No.
Police raid
What, you mean
her.
it was complete bollocks?
Bring Theo Walcott.
When police raid her home, in it they find an uncashed cheque made out to her from Sven-Göran Eriksson.
Blanket check.
Blank.
A Coots check.
My advice to Sven as his advisor would be stop writing blank checks. And it does make you wonder, did Mystic Mag do more than read his palm? I couldn't comment. Quite a nice moment when she's arrested for fraud. She says to them, "I saw this arrest coming, you know. I have supernatural contact." Quite good.
So does he not get into some financial difficulties later?
He does. Well, it's actually quite sad. He gets stiffed by his financial advisor, who still steals 10 million quid from him.
Oh no!
Most of his money.
How did he manage that?
Blank check. Someone actually filled it in for once.
£10 million.
Yeah.
But that's the end of
sad.
Sven as the England manager. He leaves in 2006. He has that little stint at Man City.
He does one season at Man City, doesn't do particularly well, and then is appointed manager of the Mexico national team, and has a pretty disastrous reign there as well. He lasts less than a year, loses to Jamaica, loses to Honduras twice. It's not all bad though, his time in Mexico. So he also enjoys a little dalliance with a Panamanian nightclub dancer that he meets on the street, who she actually ends up coming and spending Christmas in Sweden with his family.
Nice. How old is he at this point?
50s.
I think he's just like perpetually 60.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
And so this dancer comes and spends Christmas with his family.
Lovely.
She then moves back to Panama with her son, and apparently at school her son starts introducing himself as Eriksson.
I mean, it's literally your mum's going out with like a very famous person. So they actually remain together for 15 years. They stay together. She's in the doc about Sven's life because they're together until he died.
Yeah,
but it's actually quite a sweet story.
It's
Yaniseth,
true love.
I think is her name.
Yaniseth, yeah. Lovely by all accounts. Yeah, so he only lasts less than a year in Mexico, but in 2009 a new opportunity appears when Sven is offered the job of director at League Two Notts County, and this is a pretty exciting opportunity. So Notts County have just been taken over by a Middle Eastern consortium who promise that they're going to take Notts County to the Premier League. They offer Sven £2 million and a 10% stake in the club. So he's like super invested in this project. And Notts County is the oldest club in football, I think. Yeah. So he kind of sees this as a great sort of final job for his career to guide them back to the big time. And to begin with, it looks like the owners are pretty serious about this. They signed Sol Campbell, they signed Kasper Schmeichel as well. And Sven gets a very warm welcome in Nottingham. Hooters welcome him with a sign that says, "Welcome to Hooters in Nottingham, Sven-Göran Eriksson." But very quickly it transpires that all is not as it seems. So Sven's suspicions begin to be roused when the owners convince him to come to North Korea with them on a business trip. So he's sort of reluctant to do this at the start, but they're like, "Look, this is really important for the Notts County project. Like, we need to."
Why? Yeah.
I think they're getting some kind of investment or something.
Right. Alarm bells are ringing.
It's pretty crooked, but he's sort of like, okay, like when else am I going to get a chance to go to North Korea? And he goes. He says that while he's there, he gets driven around in a white limo, gets taken to inspect a pig farm. So they're driving in this like presidential motorcade in his white limo, and street sweepers are stopping and bowing at the motorcade as it goes past.
Sounds quite fun.
So they're staying in this hotel in Pyongyang, and one evening Sven decides to go out for a jog, and he's just jogging along this path when suddenly out of a bush jump two guys with machine guns who point the guns at him and guide him back to the hotel, which, to be fair, you kind of don't do that in Pyongyang.
Yeah. You can't just go for a jog.
No, a jog or armed.
No, jog.
Kidnap.
Yeah, be a good one for the Strava.
Why are they taking him out of the hotel?
just a really short square in Pyongyang. Sven ran for 2 minutes. And then he really ran.
Why were they taking him out of the hotel?
They don't want him to go and see the real Pyongyang.
Oh, I see.
Are you familiar with?
Yeah.
Hermit
I thought it was an amazing place, full of opportunity and plentiful bounty.
Prosperity.
This podcast is sponsored by
Visit Pyongyang.
The Democratic Republic of Korea.
The culmination of this trip, though, is a visit to one of the sort of government buildings. I think he's going to meet the people sort of just below Kim Jong-il, who's still in power then. And he's in a meeting with this bloke who asks him to rig the World Cup draw. So That's sort
He
of
doesn't have the power to do that.
They're sort of having a conversation, and North Korea have qualified for the 2010 World Cup, which they're really proud about. And he's talking to Sven, and he's like, there is one more thing you can help us with. It would be fantastic if North Korea could have an easy draw in the World Cup. And Sven's like, what? Like, that's not how it works. It's just, they just pick the balls out of the hat. He's like, yes, but surely there is a way. There is a way we can have an easy draw. And Sven's like, I don't think so. At this point, he's like, fucking hell, like, I'm here in Pyongyang being asked to rig the World Cup. Like, what have I got myself into?
Is that the World Cup where they sent loads of actors as their fans?
Did they?
Yeah. It was like just like loads of Malaysian guys.
They were really excited, singing made-up songs. I love how they thought Sven's the guy to do that.
Yeah.
Sven.
Slightly misunderstood. Anyway, after that, I think he's like, okay, just get me the hell out of here. And they leave to the airport the next day, and they're sort of waiting in this room for their flight. And suddenly there are sort of like these meetings coming in, and the Notts County owners who he's with are getting very stressed, and they keep on being taken off. And the time for their flight passes, and it's like, shit, like we're not getting on this flight. And it turns out that the owners are somehow involved in this like slightly dodgy oil deal between China and North Korea. And Sven says that he sees these like trade documents being passed between them, and that somehow the Notts County owners are in on this too, and they're not being allowed to leave until everything's signed off. And eventually, like, people are getting more and more stressed, and Sven's like, he tries to leave the room at some point, and the guards are like, no, get back in here. He's just like, oh, this was I should never have come.
You're like, I'm going to a labour camp.
Yeah. Eventually they do let him leave though, and he goes back to the UK. So basically, I think we're going to do a whole episode in the Notts County saga at some point, so I won't go into it all, but it transpires that these owners are basically penniless fraudsters. One of them was a convicted fraudster. They'd also, one of them, I think, or somebody they were associated with was posing as part of the Bahraini royal family,
right? The fake sheikh.
Who,
Mahmood.
Yeah.
So they're not. Do they have anything to do with Notts County at all?
Yeah, they've somehow
they have bought.
It's not like someo's emailed and being like, "I've got Notts County to sell you."
No, can
I see it?
Yeah.
Can I go to the club? No. Let's meet at Hooters.
Let's meet at Hooters Pyongyang.
I owe you one football club.
Yeah.
Right, so it's all bent.
Yeah, so the whole thing is bent, basically. They don't have any money. They said that they were backed by the Bahraini royal family, and the Bahraini royal family, it's just like, what? Never heard of you. Yeah. So it all kind of falls apart. Sven resigns after 8 months. The owners are forced to sell. Sven, apparently, when he leaves, he's owed a multi-million-pound payoff in his contract, but when the new owners come in, Sven offers to waive his entire fee in order to help them to save the club, which is a really nice gesture. Anyway, so he leaves Notts County. Just wanted to bring you back a little bit. So you remember Steve McLaren, of course. So Steve McLaren succeeded Sven as England manager, and he picked up quite a lot of tips off his old mentor, bit of 4-4-2. But in 2012, they were still good pals, and Sven recommends Steve a restaurant in Manchester. It's in a hotel. And Sven's
I've got a
quite
room
specific.
upstairs.
Yeah, Sven's quite specific. He's like, you must sit at the table in the window. It's lovely, you know. I've eaten there many times. It's an excellent view. And Steve goes there, enjoys a lovely meal, and he ends up chatting to a woman on the next table. And this leads to that, and they end up shagging, and it develops into a full affair. So she later describes McLaren as sexy, flirty, seductive, but pathetic at the same time.
I didn't realise that he was a dirty dog.
Oh yeah.
So is that a sex worker?
No.
Sit at this table and someone will come and talk to you.
It's an old friend.
Just put it, yeah. But
he's just a regular in the restaurant.
Put a red flower in his breast pocket.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Wear a trilby.
Steve's loving it.
He is. I
have to inform you, they do produce a no holds barred sex tape.
What?
No holds barred.
She describes it as no holds barred.
How have I never heard about this? Steve McLaren has a sex tape.
Yeah.
I don't think it's done the
Yuck.
And yeah, Steve's.
Do we have it?
No, I think it remains private.
Would you want to watch it?
Yes, of course, immediately.
Anyway, yeah, Steve's loving it until he discovers that him and his lover share a close mutual acquaintance, none other than Sven-Göran Eriksson. And Sven had met the same woman at the same table in the same hotel a few years earlier and had an affair with her.
But that's ended. It's not like
there's no
it's like
overlap.
a challenger
Yeah,
situation
yeah.
with Sven-Göran Eriksson and Steve McLaren
What? Yeah, it's sort
in
of
a throuple.
it's sitcom material. Sexy, flirty, seductive, but pathetic at the same time is the biggest twist in a compliment ever. All right, so Sven's
Sven's passing
doing
on.
that.
Yeah, him and
Does he have a job at
Steve are
this
close.
point?
Puppet master,
Yeah.
pimp.
So-
Sounds like it.
So the following year, 2013, Sven releases his autobiography, imaginatively titled Sven, My Story. I do want to know how many people's autobiographies are called My Story. It's just straight off the shelf. It's a good read, actually, Sven's book. It doesn't spare any details of the scandals. There was one story, though, that the publishers decided was a little bit too racy and cut it from the final version. Unfortunately, though, their Oslo bureau didn't get the memo, and the Norwegian language version of the book publishes the story uncensored. So it tells the story after a night out in Sweden. Sven ends up going back home with a woman and is lying naked on her sofa when the door swings open and it's her husband. So he recalls it in the book. He says, "Suddenly the door opened and there was a big man. 'Who the hell are you?' he said. I said, 'I think it's probably best if I leave.' And he said, 'I think it probably is.' So Sven flees out the door wearing just pants and a shirt, leaves his shoes behind. He steals some basketball shoes from the hall, which are like 7 sizes too big for him, and flees back to his hotel.
He's turning into Jermaine Pennant. He's crazy. I didn't know this story.
Yeah, I mean, it was cut from the English
Do we know how
language
old
version.
he is in this?
No,
60.
it doesn't.
Always 60.
So he's still coaching at this point. He does a stint at Leicester, stint managing the Ivory Coast, and then spends 4 years in China with a few different teams. My favourite moment from that is when he discovers that he's been sacked by one of his teams when they release a poem welcoming his replacement. So the poem reads, "We are reunited, starting a new trip together. Coach Wang, welcome home." And that was the first Sven knew of it when this poem was published.
Probably the only sacking by poem in professional football.
That's why he got into Tibet. He was like, fuck those guys. Free Tibet.
Always prefer Tibet anyway. And then after that, he kind of slips into the elder statesman role, doesn't he? He pops up for the odd bit of reminiscing. And then obviously at the start of this year, he announced that he was dying. Really sad moment. He starts working on the documentary about his life. And he fulfills one of his big dreams in football when he gets the chance to manage Liverpool. So Sven was a lifelong Liverpool fan, and there's a Liverpool Legends game, and they make Sven manager. It's really nice. And before the game, Channel 4 get a few England players together to record their memories of Sven.
Oh, yeah, I loved this.
And some of them are a bit more touching than others.
Just wanted to say I wish you all the very best and thank you for all the memories and all the help in my career, making my dream come true, playing for England at a World Cup twice. I remember I scored against Northern Ireland and you come over after the game and you said to me, you had a glass of champagne or wine in your hand. And you said, finally, you've become a complete player. And I was buzzing. It's always nice to hear that from the manager. Wish you all the very best to you and your family and be great to see you soon.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it.
Michael Owen.
I hope this finds you in good spirits. I hope you're keeping fine. And I hope you're enjoying the current England team who are doing so well. And of course, we're all looking forward to the European Championships in the summer. Take care, boss, and all the very best to you.
Fantastic.
So Michael Owen manages to record a message in which he doesn't really talk about Sven. Hello, I hear you're unwell, but looking forward to the Euros. Come on, England. Oh, it's quite the tribute. Sven died last week, age 76. His documentary came out a few days before, and it really does capture like the fun he had. I think like it's very sad at times. It's got all these scandals that we've talked about, but I think it it captures something nice about Sven's zest for life. But there was one story they didn't include that I thought I'd leave us with. This really does capture Sven's spirit. It's told by Dietmar Hamann, who played for Sven at Man City. And Dietmar remembers they went on a pre-season tour to Thailand. And at the end of the tour, Dietmar was relaxing on a hotel roof. It's 10 a.m. He's just sort of chilling on a sunbed. And suddenly Sven appears and he's carrying a silver tray with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses on it. And he glides over to Dietmar and puts the glass out in front of him. And Dietmar writes in his book, "I looked up and said, 'Boss, what are we celebrating?' He turned to me and smiled that gentle smile of his and took on the air of a Buddhist philosopher as he said, 'Life, Kaiser. We are celebrating life.'" Quite nice.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Great.
What better place to leave it?
That was really nice.
Mickey, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Zach, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for listening.